Hey everybody, welcome to the press. Welcome to the week of the U.S. Open. I'm Ryan Balaji. It's great to have you here with us. We're going to do 3 shows this week. They're pretty much all focused on the Open. Today we'll do opening lines, we'll do some initial reactions, kind of set the stage for the tournament. Tomorrow we will go over the model and the horses for courses, some potential fits based on just kind of experience of playing Pinehurst number 2 and playing just the Pinehurst Resort courses, but Pinehurst number 2 in general. And then also we'll talk about current form. Then we'll do some matchup stuff. That'll especially be on Wednesday. We'll dial in on matchups and props and things like that. There are other tournaments this week. The Korn Ferry Tour is in Kansas for their Wichita Open, one of their long-running events. So they technically have 2 events this week on the schedule. And then the LPGA is in Michigan. So we'll spend a little bit of time on that at the tail end of Wednesday just to talk about both of those tournaments, have our bases covered for the week. But this is a major week. Major stuff all the time. So be sure to subscribe to the show. You get this stuff every week. Really, we do 3 shows every week, but we're going to dial in on the U.S. Open today. So, as you know, or almost certainly knew, Scottie Scheffler won for the 5th time this season. Yesterday, he won the Memorial Tournament. He did it by a stroke. Great up and down on 18. Made a 4.5 footer to secure the win by a shot over Collin Morikawa. An incredible 2-putt on 16 that I really didn't think was going to happen, especially after that first putt. Winds up making a par there. It just kind of nurses this thing to the house and gets the job done. And Collin Morikawa played very well. He's played very well for 2.5 months now. I mean, it's kind of in that range, 2.5 months. And he is one of the few players that has consistently in this run of Scheffler's been a part of the story. You've seen Wyndham Clark be a part of it, right? Was a runner-up a couple times in a row, which is that's never happened in PGA Tour history. You have consecutive events, and the same guys finish 1-2. So he's been part of it. He has kind of fallen off, right? He's the defending champion here from a year ago. Then you've got Rory McIlroy, who's been playing well. He has been a fixture in the top 15 in the last 5 PGA Tour events he's played. Just been playing tremendous golf, and you have to keep that in mind. And then beyond that, maybe you throw in a Victor Hovland, maybe you throw in a Ludwig Aubert as players that have at least flashed a chance to have beaten him. And then, of course, you have to have Xander Schauffele in there because he won the PGA. Been having a tremendous year. Had another good week at Memorial, even though no one seemed to talk about it. And I think we have quite a short list of players who can win this thing. And that's kind of the list. And then you can decide whether you want to add some players from LIV, right? Jon Rahm pulled out 6 holes into the second round of the LIV event in Houston with some kind of foot injury. Sounds like a foot infection of some kind, which walking for 4 days on that doesn't sound great. I don't care what kind of painkillers you take. And footwork's really important in golf, so take of that which you will. And maybe it's gotten better in the last few days, right? If he takes it easy and gets the proper medication, which I'm sure he will have access to, then he'll feel substantially better. Well, but he's still not playing his best. He's been horrible in the majors, even though he hasn't finished outside the top 10 in the single LIV event that he's completed, which, if that's not the contrast, I don't know what is. And I don't know if that's because Rahm isn't playing his best in just these big tournaments. And hey, there are a lot of reasons. That could be one. It could be he feels a whole ton of pressure to perform because he made this move, and so he applies extra pressure. Maybe because he's just feeling the pressure to win more majors. Like, hey, I've won 2 of these things. I've got this window. I need to go get it now. I need to go prove I'm as good as Scottie Scheffler is. Maybe that's part of it. It could be injury. It could be a lot of things. But it's really hard to get behind Jon Rahm as a guy who can just snuff out most of the competition on LIV, not playing his best stuff, and then show up in the majors and not look like the same guy that played on the PGA Tour. Brooks did not play particularly well at Houston. Dustin Johnson's been mediocre at best. Cam Smith shot an 80 in the final round in Houston. Who are you picking from LIV? Dean Burmester? He had a great PGA championship. He's had a tremendous year. Outside of him, Bryson is your guy. He's been a contender in both majors this year. Obviously had a very good chance to win the PGA. Just fell a little short. Got a great start at the Masters, then just kind of started slip sliding backwards. I think that's because of the wind. He's just not built to be a wind player. He's huge high ball hitter. I mean, if you start throwing wind at that guy, not good things are going to happen. So, of the live contingent, he's maybe your best option if you'd like to go try and find a live guy to have on your card for whatever reason. I think we are kind of past the point now, 2 years into having live events, that you have this idea that you almost need to kind of glance over there and have someone from live, because you would feel kind of naked in your card if you didn't, and you'd feel foolish if they won and you didn't have them. I think at this point it's just evaluating them as players as best you can, knowing that you don't see the live guys as often for a variety of reasons, but also that the majors seem to be the indicator of where a person is on live, and take what you will from Brooks winning in Singapore and then kind of laying an egg for part of the PGA Championship. It doesn't mean he can't do well here. He's won this thing twice. He knows what it takes. Bryson's won this thing before, albeit in the COVID year and in a setup that's quite different than this one's going to be, but someone to consider. But through every other name out there other than Scottie Scheffler, and you can find something wrong compared to Scottie Scheffler. Scheffler has won 11 times since February 2022. That is a run comparable to what David Duval did when he finally broke through, when he won 11 times in 34 starts. Now, after that, Duval only won twice more, and that was his one major, the Open Championship, and then he never won again after that. That was it. Scheffler's not that guy, right? He finally won outside past the month of April. I don't know why anyone thought that was a thing. If you did seriously think that was a thing, that's why this podcast is here. We're here to help you understand that doesn't really matter. If you were wondering if Scheffler could move on to being a dad and moving on from the Louisville stuff, I mean, that's all done and dusted at this point. This tournament should set up very well for him. Great driver of the golf ball. He did not gain a ton of strokes at Muirfield Village, although that's hard to do given just how very difficult it is to drive the ball in the fairway there. Even with his length, he was still all over the map. The good news is it's kind of wide here. Bad news is if you miss even wider than that, the miss can be quite random and very ugly with the wiry grass. Let's get into that setup real quick. So if you haven't seen Pinehurst No. 2 or weren't involved in the game or betting in the game 10 years ago when they last had the Open here, this course was restored by Bill Coore and Ben Crenshaw. They did it in 2010, opened in 2011. I played it the week after the Masters in 2011 when it really first started going. And I played with a Hall of Fame caddy on Pinehurst No. 2 that day and one of the co-owners of the resort at the time. I mean, just incredible foursome. I have no idea how I landed in that group. But I learned a lot that day about that golf course. And it's a little different now, maybe a little bit longer, right? But not drastically so. And really the ask on the golf course isn't necessarily off of the tee. I mean, it's not going to be as wide as LACC was last year. I mean, that was kind of absurd. But it's still fairly wide. It's still fairly generous off the tee. There are wider fairways, even though those effective landing areas may not be that big in the end. It depends on what kind of weather comes in leading into the championship, because the weather forecast is hot and sunny for 4 straight days. 89, 91, 94, 93 or something like that. I mean, 93, 94. Well, it's going to be hot. It's going to be sticky, and there's not going to be a lot of wind. So this golf course is going to dry out very much, even if there's any precipitation, even a hint of precipitation between now and Thursday morning. It's going to get evaporated very quickly. It's not going to mean a lot. You've got the sand base in this part of Carolina and down through a different stretch of the American Southeast. That means the course drains exceptionally well. So even if it does rain, it doesn't stay in the soil, doesn't soften the golf course in the same way that you would expect, like here in the DC area where we've got a lot of clay base, for example. So even if there is precipitation, I don't expect it to matter a whole lot. There isn't really rough at this golf course. There is some, but not much. Most of it is around the green complexes. And that's really after the catch-all of the kind of catch basins around the greens. Tee to green, your rough is kind of this wire grass, kind of grows in tufts, and it can create really random lies. Now, more often than not, you can get a club on the ball, but sometimes it's going to deflect your ball, or you're going to have to get the ball up quickly to get around it, or you may be stuck right in it and have to chip around it. I mean, it's going to be pretty random. And there are way more of them than there were 10 years ago. Places matured, grown out differently. So it's going to be tricky. That's going to pose a significant problem. So you want to put the ball in play. And that may mean with the firmness you're expecting, the run out, the heat you're expecting, driver is not going to be the most important thing here. Driver cannot be the most important thing here. I just don't see how that's possible. Because if your 3-wood or your 2-iron or your hybrid, whatever you're going to hit, runs out pretty well, there are going to be spots where the fairway runs out and you're going to have to stay short anyway. A lot of times it's going to be smart to just kind of put it out there. And I think that's going to be the play for a lot of the longer players. The longer holes, and there are some, you're going to want to take driver. You're going to want to take maximum advantage. But a lot of playing for position on this golf course. This is a second shot golf course. Very much a second shot golf course. And a third shot golf course for that matter. These greens are what are described as turtleback, right? They're kind of sloped, where they have a crown in the middle where the effective playing area or the pinnable playing area is. And then there's technically putting surface around that. But if you're hitting that area, you're almost certainly missing the green. And you're going to roll off toward somewhere. And that's fine, but you got to know that up front, which means a lot of players are going to learn it over the next couple of days if they've never played number 2. That is that you need to be able to miss short. Missing left, missing right, missing long are just bad ideas on this golf course by and large. Missing short gives you a better chance to run it up and access whatever hole location you're looking for. You need to know the misses on this golf course. Otherwise, you're going to be doing a lot of bumping into hills. The whole idea of like flopping your way around is not a good idea. I learned that firsthand the hard way. You really cannot play consistently through the air with your wedge around the greens. It's just not designed to do that. So that's why you'll see someone like Tiger Woods in his practice rounds. He's trying to chip a little 4-iron a little bit longer than you would just get a putter because he's worried about grain. And then you're going to get a couple skips and then it's going to run out. And you're going to see a lot of that this week. You're going to see a lot of guys probably pull out hybrids and 3-woods and try and use it as a putter, kind of skid it, because you're going to want to try and get past grain. Grain's a big thing on Bermuda grass, and that's something you have to consider here. A lot of the hills, you're going to play into the grain. The grain's not going to be with you, which means if you take out putter, it's going to be automatically slowed down the second you hit it. More so than with a hybrid or a pitching, chipping club, whatever that is, whether it's an iron hybrid, whatever. So that's why you're going to see a lot of that. And you're going to want to keep it on the ground if you can't hit the green. So the strategy is quite different than traditional U.S. Opens, last year's U.S. Open. It's a different game. And if things are as spicy as I think they're going to be, I think you're going to get something a little bit closer to what the B Flight had in 2014, not the championship that Martin Keimer won by shooting 130 for the first 36 holes and then just never making a mistake. The tournament was over at that point. So I think par will be challenging here. And I also think it's worth noting that there's going to be a lot more people at this golf course than there was last year. LACC intentionally asked the USGA, required the USGA, whatever language you want to use, to have fewer people there. And a lot of them were LACC members or members' friends. And that's why it wasn't quite as loud and rambunctious. There were a lot of parts of the golf course, people just didn't go. That is not going to be the case here. This place is going to be loud and active. So if you have this thing about players winning, with lesser crowds or what have you, or kind of clamming up when there are a ton of people, not that I throw that in my handicapping too often, but it is something to consider here. I think it was a little bit easier for Wyndham, frankly, because there weren't lords of people over him rooting for Rory McIlroy or Ricky Fowler to the same extent that if they did it this year in the same circumstance, I think Wyndham would feel a little differently about how he was received. So just something to consider as we go along the course of the tournament. It's the 4th U.S. Open at Pinehurst, number 2. they've all been a little bit different. The Pinehurst original in '99 with Payne Stewart and Phil Mickelson, that showdown, which was fantastic at the end. You have Michael Campbell be the surprise winner 6 years later. Martin Keimer played a one-man tournament effectively in 2014. So three quite different opens, but you've had three unexpected champions because Payne just kind of a different stage of his career at that point. Wasn't expected to win the U.S. Open at that stage of his life. It did. Michael Campbell, I don't think anyone really ever had being a major champion, even though he was an accomplished worldwide golfer. And Martin Keimer wound up winning his second major, and by the way, also won a Players. And then basically never won again. Very strange. So, all signs point to the generational player that is before us winning, right? And that's why Scottie Scheffler's 3-1 to win this thing. And that's, to me, an unbettable number. Like, I'm not locking up money for 6 days or 5 days to get a 3-1 payoff. I'd much rather go bet some nerfies and yerfies and some over-unders in the NBA, stuff like that. Like, stuff that I can get a return on in less than 10 minutes. I could get that money. Why are we doing that? If you're looking at the top 10, Scottie Scheffler is minus 250. That's unbelievable. Yet also very accurate, because in 10 of the last 13 majors, Scottie Scheffler has been in the top 10, and he's won twice. Now, they're Masters, but in the U.S. Open, he's been, 7th, 2nd, and 3rd last 3 years? So the guy gets the championship. He gets this style of golf, and he thrives in these kinds of difficult scoring conditions where a lot of people just back down. He loves this kind of stuff. So you have to know that he's going to be part of the equation. So if you're not betting Scottie Scheffler at 3-1, what are you doing? How are you going to try to make money this week? And I think you have plenty of options to consider. And if you want to look at a couple of different markets, and that's what we'll talk about a little bit here after we go over the outright market, and then we'll get into some of those other ways maybe you can try to monetize this week if you think Scheffler's going to win without having to bet on him. All right, so let's go over the top of the table. We'll run our way down. One thing you're going to notice, the 156-person event, about a third of the field, a little bit less than that nowadays, which is a shame, gets in via qualifying. Because I looked at the qualifying list from 5 years ago, just as a reference point. 75 players got in via qualifying 5 years ago. Now it's basically half that. I think that's a bummer, but the USGA has moved this championship more toward an exempt championship than a true open, which I don't like, but that's not what we're here to talk about. All right, so let's start at the top of the table. We said it. Scottie Scheffler's 3-1 to win. Me, an unbettable number, but if you want some kind of, or want to pursue some kind of strategy where you want to look at Scheffler as kind of like your base case, you put a significant position on him, and then you are trying to kind of recoup better than that with your others. I guess that's up to you. I don't find that too fun, but go for it. Xander Schauffele and Rory McIlroy are both 11-1. You get slightly better odds on Rory McIlroy to finish in the top 10 at plus 125 compared to Xander Schauffele, who again has been basically a mainstay of this championship. Before he won the PGA, Schauffele did most of his damage in the Masters and the U.S. Open. So people would have, like myself, said, well, if and when he gets a major, it's going to be one of those two. Surprised he didn't. So I still think he's a great play here. Great finish last week. Colin Morikawa, 14-1. Again, these are all guys we've talked about. The guys who have stood up to Scottie Scheffler in some fashion, some consistent fashion this year, or have just been pretty strong across the board. Those guys are playable for me. That's fine. I don't think McIlroy's my favorite play here, just because I don't love his wedge game, and I think that's going to be a bugaboo this week. I think putting is going to be a problem for everybody if these greens are firm and fast, as I expect them, because there are going to be guys who putt very defensively this week for fear of winding up off green, like truly putting off of greens. That is going to happen at some point this week. There are going to be people who putt off greens, and that's a defensive position you're going to have to take as a player. DeChambeau, 18-1. Victor Hovland and Brooks Koepka are 20-1. Again, Hovland's short game is so suspect. I know it's better than it was. I know it's way better than it was, but it makes me worry a lot about him. Koepka has played well, obviously, in this championship to have won it twice. Been the first guy in 30 years to go back-to-back. And I think he can do it here. He has great ball striking. he tends to show up more when the scoring gets tricky. And to be honest, Hovland does too. So I think they're both reasonable plays. 22-1, Ludwig Aubert. Saw some good results out of him from Memorial. I took him in one and done almost by process of elimination, but there's a very decent chance I change that by the time we get to Thursday. I may go Bryson. It's a tricky one, given the pattern that I've used this year. John Rahm's 28-1, pass. Tommy Fleetwood 35-1, doesn't win in the U.S., so I skip. Matt Fitzpatrick's been playing pretty good golf lately at 40-1. He's done this thing. He's won this championship. Won it on a setup somewhat dissimilar and also not dissimilar from what you will see this week. I don't think you have to be a long hitter to win here. I think that the ground conditions will take care of that. Just keep it in play. I like him at that number. Justin Thomas is 40-1 as well. He's had his chances in the U.S. Open, but most of those have kind of come on the ones where it's been a little bit more scoreable. I just don't know what to make of Justin Thomas right now. Just not sure. Hideki 40-1. Same with Cam Smith. Cam Smith just shot an 80. I know some people are going to love it because they're going to go, oh, it's sandbelt golf, and that's the style of golf he likes. And maybe that's fair to say, but the variability on Cam Smith right now is all over the place. I mean, just all over the place. He's been okay in some live events, horrible in others, okay at times in the majors, but mostly not since going to live. I just can't at that price. Patrick Cantlay 50, pass. Max Homa 50, maybe. I kind of gotten to that point where I've said, hey, if Max Homa's 50-1, you're going to have to bet him out of principle. I said that a number of years ago, and I may have to hold firm to it this week. I do like what he brings to the table. He recovered nicely from a horrific finish at Colonial. Just all around bad at Colonial. So maybe there's something to be said for that. Tyrrell Hatton, Sahith Theegala 55-1. I love Theegala's game. I think the imagination could run wild here and be great, or it could just overtake him. But he has been excellent of late. And 50-1, 55-1 is right about in that sweet spot. Tony Finau, Tom Kim, Shane Lowry 60-1. Tom Kim's tee to green game has been terrific. I like what he's been doing. Tony Finau, I think, has been playing a lot better golf. I mean, just kind of based on the results and the numbers. He also throws in these clunkers, so it's kind of hard to back. But I could see him playing very well this week. It's just, if your theory of the case is like mine, that everyone's going to struggle to putt pretty well, pretty consistently, and that negates the skill of putting, then that opens up guys like Morikawa and Tony Finau, right? Because they don't have to putt as good. They just have to putt marginally better than they maybe normally do. 65-1. Sam Burns is kind of interesting. Bermuda Burns, playing better golf, been playing very well lately on the tight tracks, tougher tracks. Could be kind of an out-of-nowhere play. Hard to put money on him given the season he's had, but given the current form, I could see a sprinkling. Minwoo Lee, Jordan Spieth are also 65-1. Wyndham Clark 70-1 as defending champion, which always seems kind of weird to me. I mean, I know he's not playing great now, but if it depends on how generous you think the landing areas are off the tee at number 2. How much Wyndham does. If he finds them generous and hit them consistently, we've got something here. But I'm not as big. I would rather bet Sepp Straka at 70-1 than Wyndham Clark. Sepp's been playing great golf last few times out. Was great at Memorial. Just been a solid player. 75-1. Sungjae Im. He's back. Playing great golf. 3 top 15 finishes in the last 6 events played. He's playing great golf again. Is that good enough to win a major? Probably not, but I do like the creativity of his short game. It's been better. It's getting better. And I think that's a positive. 75-1. Also, Keegan Bradley, Corey Connors. Great ball strikers, bad putters. Maybe. But I'm inclined to stay away. Russell Henley, 80-1. Killer short game. Distance won't hurt him. Playing pretty good. I think I need a little bit more than 80 for him. Cam Young, Dustin Johnson, Will Zalatoris, Bobby Mack. bet on all 80 to 1. How the mighty have fallen for Dustin Johnson to be in this range. Zalatoris' putting and short game is kind of a nightmare. Cam Young has never won. I don't expect this to be his first. Bobby Mack has been playing very, very good golf. And in a way, I am more intrigued about him because he went home and didn't just keep playing after winning. Like, he took the time to celebrate and appreciate it. And he seems like that kind of emotional guy that kind of needs that. Maybe he did the right thing for himself. Just saying. Jason Day 90 to 1. Dean Burmester 100 to 1. Been playing great on Live. Has won 3 times worldwide in the last 9 months. Now, have they been in big tournaments? No, not really. But he has been winning. And he does seem to like these tricky tournaments. Not enough for me to bet on him to win a major championship, but worth looking at least as a fun bet. I love Ryan Fox here. I'm going to start picking off randoms now. Ryan Fox at 130 to 1. Man, that's almost worth it for me. I might get in there with a pizza bet or a little $10 bet or something. I love Ryan Fox's game for this place. Just mash the heck out of the ball, get it in play, and hope you hit a lot of greens. And that's the coin flip with him, right? Is keeps it in play, he can do a lot of good stuff. And he might clam up a little bit, kind of like he did in Canada, but he might not. And I think that's just about the right price for Ryan Fox at 130. I love it at 150. Love it even more then. Denny McCarthy 130. Vaguely interesting to me, but not completely sold. Brian Harmon 130. Justin Rose 130. Billy Horschel, who I think I like quite a bit in this situation, 130. Adam Scott 130. Continues his streak of major championship starts. 92 in a row. Pretty incredible for that guy. And if you want to have the theory that Sandbelt golf is comparable to what you're going to get at Pinehurst number 2, and I don't fully agree with that sentiment, but there's some validity to that, then why wouldn't you consider Adam Scott? Worked hard to try to get in, came up just a shot shy in the final qualifying stages. He's fallen down the official World Golf ranking this year, but it's not horrible, and being a bad putter doesn't really work against you here. So, okay, I can live with that. Tom Hoagie 150 to 1. Sergio Garcia 150 to 1, along with Harris English, who's played this championship pretty well over the years, had a good run in 2021 at Torrey Pines. Adam Hadwin just had a very nice run at the Memorial Tournament, right? I mean, not so bad. Hadwin got pipped also by Corey Connors in the Canadian Open. He's been playing pretty good golf. You don't have to be especially long here. He can keep the ball in play. Intriguing number at 150 to 1. Intriguing. Mac Hughes 180, Kurt Kitayama 180, JT Poston, Aaron Rye, Austin Eckroat, Akshay, Tom Dietrich, all 180 to 1. Tom Dietrich could be interesting. I don't love it, but it could be kind of interesting. Mac Hughes is kind of interesting to me. Been playing pretty okay golf for him. He's been playing pretty well recently. Your 200s, Ricky Fowler, who is just awful at Memorial. Victor Perez, Nikolai Højgaard, Nick Dunlap, who's been kind of playing better lately, showing some flashes. He's starting to figure out how to play this tour, but no way am I getting in on that. Adrian Meronk, 200 to 1, has played pretty okay this year in his major championship opportunities. Just had a chance to win on Live. If you're trying to think of a weird champion, Adrian Meronk kind of fits the bill. No joke. I mean, if you think about the way he's played this year, and he missed the cut at the PGA just by one, missed badly at the Masters. But if you think about his year on Live, it's been pretty good. And he just played pretty well. Now, what's the carryover from Live to this? Almost zero, probably, to be honest. I still do not see the carryover between performance in those events and here. 250s, Chris Kirk, Taylor Pendrith, Steven Yeager. Steven Yeager could be an interesting one. If you think about the guys who played well 10 years ago, Martin Keimer, not that different. German, but that's not the connection I'm looking for. I'm thinking more like an Eric Compton, even though Steven Yeager is so much longer than Eric Compton was. More like a Ricky Fowler, like really great ball striker, tee to green, plenty of distance, struggles sometimes with the flat stick. That could be an interesting play. Lucas Glover, EVR, Davis Thompson, all 250. 300s, Seamus Power, Taylor Moore, Tiger Woods, Nick Taylor, Eric Cole, Daniel Berger, Cam Davis, Tom McKibben, aforementioned Marty Keimer, Bo Hostler, Adam Svensson. I mean, now we're getting into digging deep territory. If you want like a super mega crazy long shot, take David Pooch from Live, 350 to 1. Played his way into this thing. T3 finished yesterday on Live. Has played well on the Asian Tour, won on the Asian Tour. I know that's not the same equivalent and not even close to these kinds of high-level PGA Tour events, but he has been racking up wins, gaining points, working hard to get in the top 100 in the world. Is showing himself to be a pretty good professional golfer. I think he's worth at least a consideration. Outside of that, maybe you want to hear a fun story in Harry Higgs at 400 to 1. Mac Meisner is playing well on the PGA Tour right now. 2 top 15s in his last 6 events. 400 to 1. Maybe you want to look at that instead. Top 10, 25 to 1. Gordon Sargent could surprise you here. Gordon Sargent is going to be a great professional golfer. He's 600 to 1. I'd like him on a random top 10 at 35 to 1, though. I like that quite a bit. Frankie Sapp in the third. He's been playing great on the Korn Ferry Tour. 40 to 1 on a top 10. Maybe you like him kind of about half that number on a top 20 finish. I think the guys on the Korn Ferry can make a little noise this week. After that, it starts to get pretty dark. Just so you realize, they're like a third of the field is at least 2,000 to 1 or worse. I mean, about a third of the field is at least 1,000 to 1 or worse. So as far as we're concerned, we threw out some cool names there at 300, 400 to 1. I think the furthest you could go and think about seriously, maybe I might get this money back, is 130 to 1, 150 to 1. And that would be a pretty much an all-timer, when the reality is Scotty Scheffler is the most likely player to win this thing and do it pretty easily. So everything that we're doing this week, models, trying to kind of shimmy our way to someone other than Scotty Scheffler winning this thing, you have to keep that in mind the whole way through. So maybe you want to spend some more time on your derivatives, your 20s, 30s, and 40s. I mentioned Frankie Sapp in the third. He's 12 to 1 on a top 20 finish. That's not horrible. I think he's capable of doing. He's played in a couple. This is second Open, I think. But guys like that, maybe a Harry Higgs, 8 to 1 on a top 20, not so bad. I could be interested in that. Okay, so some guys to consider there. We don't have the draw yet, so I don't want to consider round finishing position. We should get that tomorrow. I will be in the car driving to Pinehurst when that probably gets released. So we'll probably just cover that on Wednesday along with the prop bet stuff, but we'll get to that, promise. Tournament props, nationality props, matchups, we'll get through all of that on Wednesday. Some market you may want to consider, and this is totally up to you, right, is would you want to look at players to win without Scotty Scheffler or without Scheffler, McIlroy, and Schauffele? Because that bet without those 3 players is minus 200. I think you can have many more interesting bets without having to take that on. So you might be able to go find a prop like to win without Scheffler, win without Scheffler, McIlroy, Schauffele, win without Scheffler, Morikawa, Schauffele, 4 players. I mean, you can find those markets out there, and they are kind of interesting, I think, because, I mean, that those are your most likely winners, right? So if you think you want to try to take them out and find someone else and find some value in that, I think that's a worthwhile exercise this week. I won't go into it too far in this show because otherwise I've made you listen for long enough to kind of prep you for the tournament, and we'll talk about that tomorrow in the model Horse for Course current form episode. A lot to go through, a lot that we went through in 30 some odd minutes so far, and we'll cover so much more tomorrow. If you are interested, head over to golfnewsnet.com. You can join our membership product for $40 for the year. I would do it today or tomorrow, so you get 5 majors worth for your $40. Or you can do it for the week for $10, and then you can cancel after 7 days. That's up to you. I wouldn't do that, but it's up to you. And if you have any questions, email me, Ryan at thegolfnewsnet.com, Twitter, Threads, X, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Ryan Ballingy, Facebook, YouTube, Ryan Ballingy Golf. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you in the next episode. Let's make it a great week, everybody.